At the time, I was 13 years old, playing the newly released Guitar Hero 3. In my brother's room, waiting for him to come home from a party. I think this was on a Friday night. Both my parents were either at work or away as well. Anyways, as time passed and it got late, maybe a bit over midnight, I swear I heard footsteps coming up to the second floor where we lived. I had to finish the song first, but as the song kept going, I thought it was strange that no one entered the door. Maybe it was my imagination playing tricks on me, maybe it was an animal. The song ended and I went casually slid the front door open to check. Silence, however, we have a motion light which was turned on, indicating that someone had been there. Keep in mind this was not a really sensitive motion sensor, as it would barely register our cat, although it would happen, so I didn't exclude the possibility. Still a bit weirded out nonetheless. I go to the living room to look out to the front porch, same thing. Motion sensor had been activated and the front yard was lit. No animals or humans. Even more weirded out at this point. I go to bed, and about 5 minutes as I lay there, I could hear empty plastic bottles that were in the kitchen fall to the ground, making several loud sounds that would echo throughout the whole house. At this point, I was sure something was going on, some kind of presence was around. My brother eventually came home and I told him the story. There was another short encounter one day when I would hear a noise under the bed as if my cat was clawing on my mattress from underneath. I didn't really think much of it until my father would open the front door of the house, letting my cat inside. What then was under my bed, I wondered, frozen in fear until I fell asleep. It was during the day after school. I was at a friend's house playing on his father's computer. I was maybe 10 years old at the time when my friend and his mother went to the store. I was then alone in the house, his father at work. However, his dog was with me, sleeping next to the computer screen. Not the biggest dog. After maybe 15 minutes, I heard it. A knife fall to the floor from the kitchen. I knew it was a knife the second I heard it. My blood ran cold, but I kept on playing. Even the dog was weirded out, but quickly went back to sleep. I might have heard some other noises as well, but not as profound as the knife. Eventually, my friend and his mom got back from the store, and indeed a knife was on the ground. I was too scared to go check by myself. It was a quiet night, and my dad and I were sitting in the living room watching TV. Suddenly, we heard a loud bang coming from upstairs. My dad looked at me, and I could see the fear in his eyes. My dad got up from the couch and motioned for me to follow him. We crept up the stairs, trying to be as quiet as possible. As we reached the top of the stairs, we heard another noise. This time, it sounded like footsteps. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I could feel my palms sweating. My dad looked at me again, and I could see that he was just as scared as I was. We slowly made our way down the hallway, checking each room as we went. But there was nothing there, no one there. It was just the two of us and the sound of our own breathing. We were about to turn back when we heard another noise. This time it was a soft thud, definitely coming from one of the rooms down the hall. My dad motioned for me to wait as he opened the door to the room where the sound had come from. The room was empty and there was no sign of anyone or anything that could have caused the noise. We continued to search the other rooms but found nothing. We were both feeling uneasy and on edge, not knowing what to expect next. As we headed back down the stairs, we heard another noise coming from upstairs. This time it sounded like a door closing. My dad and I exchanged a look, and we knew that we had to investigate. We slowly climbed the stairs again, and as we got closer to the top, the feeling of dread intensified. We approached the room where the noise had come from, and my dad pushed the door open. Inside, the room was dark and silent, but as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I could see a faint outline of a figure standing in the corner. I froze, and my dad's hand gripped my shoulder tightly. We both stood there, not daring to move or speak. The figure in the corner seemed to be looking right at us, but we couldn't make out any details. Suddenly, the figure started to move, and my dad and I both let out a scream. But as the figure moved towards us, we could see that it wasn't a person at all. It was just a coat hanging on a hook, swaying back and forth in the breeze. We both let out a sigh of relief, but the feeling of unease didn't go away. As we headed back down the stairs, we could still hear strange noises coming from upstairs. We never did find out what was causing the sounds, and we never talked about that night again. But every time I think about it, I can still feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Something was definitely not right in that house, and I'm just glad we made it out okay. It was a typical day at the office, and I was sitting at my desk typing away on my computer. As I was working, I heard a strange noise coming from the printer room down the hall. It was a soft rustling sound, like papers being shuffled around. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but the noise persisted. It was almost like someone was in there, shuffling papers around, trying to find something. Curiosity got the best of me, and I got up from my desk and made my way down the hall to the printer room. As I approached the door, the sound got louder, and I could hear someone breathing. It was slow and labored, like they were struggling to catch their breath. I hesitated for a moment before reaching for the door handle. But as I turned it, the noise suddenly stopped. The room was empty, and there was no one in sight. But there was something odd about the room, like a presence still lingered, as if someone was holding their breath, waiting for me to leave. So I did. I headed back to my desk. It wasn't until later in the day, when one of my coworkers approached me, that I realized that I wasn't the only one experiencing something strange. She looked at me with wide eyes and whispered that she had seen a shadowy figure moving around the break room when she was alone. The fear in her eyes was real. We decided to investigate together, and as we made our way to the break room, the feeling of unease grew stronger. When we entered the break room, we saw nothing out of the ordinary. The room was colder than usual, that was for sure. But as we started to walk around, we could hear the sound of footsteps echoing through the room, even though there was no one there. It was like someone was pacing back and forth just out of sight. Suddenly, the room grew colder and the air felt thick and heavy. We could barely see anything in front of us, but we could feel the presence of something else in the room, something that wasn't supposed to be there. We both froze, unsure of what to do. The footsteps grew louder, and we could hear something moving towards us. It was like a cold breeze that seemed to wrap around us, leaving us shivering and scared. Without warning, something pushed me from behind, causing me to stumble forward. My coworker screamed, and I could feel her grabbing onto me tightly. But when we turned around, there was no one there. We were alone, or at least we thought we were. As we made our way back to our desks, we both knew that something was off in the office. It wasn't just our imagination, and it wasn't just a coincidence. Something was happening, something that we couldn't explain. Over the next few days, strange things continued to happen. Objects would move on their own, and we would hear strange noises coming from empty rooms. We tried to ignore it, thinking that maybe it was just a fluke, but we both knew that we couldn't keep pretending that everything was normal. Eventually, we decided to talk to our boss about what was going on. To our surprise, he didn't seem surprised at all. In fact, he told us that there had been rumors of paranormal activity in the building for years. Apparently, the building had been built on top of an old cemetery, and some people believed that the spirits of the dead still lingered there, unable to move on. After that conversation, we both knew that we had to do something. We couldn't keep working in an environment where we felt unsafe and scared all the time. So we decided to do some research and try to find a way to help the spirits move on. We contacted a local paranormal investigation team and asked them to come to the office to investigate. They spent hours conducting tests and gathering evidence, and in the end, they confirmed that there were indeed spirits present in the building. With their help, we were able to perform a cleansing ritual that helped the spirits move on. The strange noises and feelings of unease disappeared, and we were finally able to work in peace. Although the experience was scary and unsettling, it taught us both that sometimes the unknown can be just as real as what we can see and touch. And sometimes the best thing we can do is to face our fears and confront them head on. I was riding my bike with my friends, eager to explore the empty kindergarten in our neighborhood. We had heard that it gave off a creepy vibe when there were no lights on, and we wanted to see it for ourselves. As we approached the kindergarten, we slowed down and looked around. The whole place was deserted with no one in sight. We parked our bikes and started to explore the area. At first it was fun. We ran around the playground and laughed at how small the equipment seemed to us now. But as we wandered deeper into the kindergarten, the atmosphere started to change. The air grew colder and still, and the silence around us became deafening. We were all starting to feel uneasy when we saw something in the distance. It was a figure on one of the swings. We all froze in terror. The figure was shrouded in darkness, but we could see its shape on the swing. It was looking at us. We tried to rationalize it, thinking maybe it was just a trick of the light, but deep down, we knew it wasn't. We slowly started to back away, our hearts racing, but the figure on the swing didn't move. We ran to our bikes and got the hell out of there. As we rode away from the kindergarten, I looked back over my shoulder, half expecting to see the figure following us. But there was nothing there, just an empty playground bathed in moonlight. When we got back to our neighborhood, we couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled over us. We tried to convince ourselves that it was just our imagination, but we all knew what we had seen. Over the next few days, we talked about the figure on the swing and tried to come up with explanations for what we had witnessed. But no matter how hard we tried, we couldn't find a logical reason for what we had seen. Eventually, we stopped talking about it and tried to forget the whole thing. But even years later, I still get chills when I think about that empty kindergarten and the figure on the swing, watching us with dark, unseeing eyes.